You meet someone new. Before they say a single word, your brain has already decided things about them. Are they smart? Are they kind? Are they trustworthy? You think you're waiting to find out. You're not. You already decided. And the thing deciding for you has almost nothing to do with who they actually are. It has to do with their face. This is going to sound absurd, but stay with it, because the science behind it is stranger than the claim itself. A stranger's bone structure can shape how competent you think they are. A stranger's smile can shape how honest you assume they are. None of this is a conscious choice. It happens in a fraction of a second, long before your rational mind gets a vote. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it the halo effect. And once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. In your job interviews, in your relationships, in your politics, in the way you scroll past some faces and linger on others without knowing why. Let's go back to where it started. In 1920, a psychologist named Edward Thorndike was studying something that seemed simple on the surface. He asked military officers to rate their soldiers on a handful of separate traits: intelligence, physical ability, leadership, character. These were supposed to be independent judgments. A soldier could be physically strong, but not particularly clever. He could be a poor leader, but a person of deep integrity. That's not what Thorndike found. Instead, the ratings clustered together in a strange way. If an officer rated a soldier highly on one trait, he tended to rate that same soldier highly on all the others, even traits that had nothing to do with each other. A soldier who was tall and fit was suddenly assumed to be smarter. A soldier who looked confident was assumed to have better character. One positive impression was bleeding into every other judgment, like a single drop of ink spreading through water. Thorndike called this the halo effect, after the glowing ring painted around the heads of saints in religious art. One shining quality was casting a glow over everything else about the person, whether that glow was earned or not. Why would a rational mind do this? Here's the strange part. It isn't a flaw. It's a shortcut. Your brain evolved to make fast survival decisions with limited information. Thousands of years ago, deciding whether a stranger was a threat or an ally in 3 seconds could be the difference between living and dying. There was no time for a background check. There was no time to gather 12 data points and weigh them individually. Your ancestors needed a fast, simplified summary judgment, and appearance was one of the only pieces of information available at a distance. So the brain built a mental shortcut. One trait stands in for the whole person. Attractive equals competent. Confident equals correct. Warm equals honest. It's not evidence. It's a guess dressed up as certainty. And that guess still runs the show today, even in situations that have nothing to do with survival. In 1972, psychologists Karen Dion, Ellen Berscheid, and Elaine Walster ran an experiment that would become one of the most cited studies in social psychology. They showed participants photographs of people rated as attractive, average, or unattractive, and asked them to predict things about each person's life. Not their looks, their personality, their career success, their happiness, their likelihood of being a good parent. The participants had never met any of these people. They had no information beyond a photograph. And yet they consistently predicted that the attractive individuals would have better personalities, more prestigious jobs, and happier marriages. The researchers called it the physical attractiveness stereotype. You might know it by its more common name. What is beautiful is good. Think about how strange that actually is. A photograph tells you nothing about someone's kindness, nothing about their honesty, nothing about whether they'd make a good friend in a crisis, but your brain doesn't pause to ask whether it has enough information. It fills in the blanks anyway, and it fills them in generously for attractive faces. This isn't only about beauty, though. The halo effect shows up anywhere a single strong impression exists. Picture a job interview. A candidate walks in wearing a sharp suit, offers a firm handshake, and speaks with confidence. Before they've answered a single technical question, the interviewer has already started forming an opinion about their competence. Confidence becomes a stand-in for skill. Poise becomes a stand-in for intelligence. The interviewer isn't lying to themselves. They genuinely believe they're evaluating qualifications. But the halo was already cast the moment the candidate walked through the door. Here's where it gets more uncomfortable. Researchers Richard Nisbett and Timothy Wilson ran a now famous study in 1977 that revealed something even stranger about the halo effect. They showed students a video of a professor answering questions. In one version, the professor came across as warm and likable. In another version, the same professor, using the same script, came across as cold and distant. Students who watched the warm version rated the professor's appearance, mannerisms, and even his accent as more appealing. Students who watched the cold version rated those exact same physical features as irritating. Same face, same voice, same words. Completely different judgments, all because of one shift in perceived warmth. But here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. When Nisbett and Wilson asked the students afterward whether their liking of the professor had influenced their opinion of his appearance, almost none of them believed it had. They insisted their judgments about his looks and mannerisms were independent and objective. They had no idea the halo effect was steering them the entire time. That's the real danger of this bias. It isn't that you're occasionally fooled by first impressions, it's that you don't know you're being fooled. The halo effect doesn't feel like a bias from the inside. It feels like clear, rational perception. Your brain doesn't announce, "I am filling in gaps with assumptions right now." It simply hands you a finished conclusion and lets you believe you reasoned your way there. This is why the halo effect is so powerful in places where the stakes are high. In courtrooms, more attractive defendants have been shown to receive more lenient sentences for similar crimes. In elections, voters consistently rate taller, more conventionally attractive candidates as more competent leaders, independent of their actual policies. In hiring, resumes attached to a photo of an attractive candidate are rated more favorably than the identical resume attached to a less attractive photo. None of the people making these judgments believe they are being shallow. They believe they are evaluating merit. That's what makes the halo effect so difficult to fight. You cannot simply decide to stop doing it because you don't experience it as a decision in the first place. There's also a reverse version of this effect, sometimes called the horn effect. One negative trait casts a shadow instead of a glow, and suddenly every other judgment about that person darkens along with it. A single awkward moment in an interview, a single unflattering photo, a single harsh sentence taken out of context. The shadow spreads the same way the glow does, coloring everything that follows. So what do you do with this information? You can't switch off millions of years of evolved shortcuts by sheer willpower, but you can slow the process down. Psychologists have found that structured evaluation helps break the halo. When employers use standardized interview questions and score each answer separately before forming an overall impression, the halo effect shrinks. When judges are given strict sentencing guidelines instead of open discretion, appearance-based bias shrinks. The trick isn't eliminating the shortcut. It's forcing your mind to slow down long enough for the shortcut to lose its grip. Think about the last time you scrolled through a dating app, or sat across from someone in a job interview, or watched a politician speak on stage. Somewhere in that split second before you formed an opinion, a single trait, a smile, a voice, a jawline, was already writing the story your brain would tell about everything else. You weren't collecting evidence. You were filling in a glow. You meet someone new. Before they say a single word, your brain has already decided things about them. Now you know why? It was never really about them at all. It was about the shortcut running quietly underneath every judgment you've ever made. One shining trait convincing you it was the whole picture.